Hello, friends of Herbie. Welcome to the 7th edition of the Campfire Talks with Herbie, where we delve into the topics of TameFlow and the theory of constraints. As you know, in the last few days, I have been experimenting a number of different formats. Yesterday, it was with several participants, and maybe we will open up the stream to others as we go along. But today, I go back to the format of having a guest. And this person is from Denmark and has a long experience in this field, even if he originally was not in this field at all. But we'll listen to his story now, and he is Mark Jørgensen Chaudhry, if I pronounced that correctly. And here he comes. Hello, Mark. Did I pronounce your last names correctly?
Not at all.
Oh, good.
No, it's Jørgensen. If you're from Denmark, you probably know that. And my father, he is my father would pronounce my last name Chaudhry.
Okay.
But anyway, I've been called a lot of different things because it's difficult to understand what that is. So even in French accent.
Can you explain where that second name comes from?
Yeah, it's originally. It's originally Indian. But my father is from Pakistan because India got split into Pakistan and India in 1947, I believe. So it's my father's from Pakistan and my mother's from Denmark. So that's where it's from.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So let's get to know you a bit more. Now, who are you first of all? What's your short story in life?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think probably to say the easiest on where I am now, instead of telling a whole life story, is I use this like a little bit of sentence, which is a why or a purpose or whatever we want to call it, philosophical. So and that is to trust and inspire human beings so that they may grow to live their purpose. I'm actually like wearing a t-shirt on that stuff right now.
So to trust and inspire human beings is that may
so that they may grow to live their purpose.
Okay.
So that's a slightly philosophical, you might say.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think when I read your book and the unity of purpose thing, that sort of I sort of clicked into that thing.
You like that?
I very much like that we should have a unity of purpose. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've been doing a lot of stuff. I've been self-employed for 15 years in small startups, and I'm originally a graphic designer. So that was very much like with customer centricity, if you will, or usability. Today we call this user experience. So I'm like specialized in that. I had my own company, so I would describe myself as customer obsessed.
Okay.
Basically, I figured out that if the customers don't, like my services, they wouldn't pay, and then I won't eat. It's very simple. So I would call myself customer obsessed, and I bring this with me today also. And like for the last maybe 10 years or so, I've been in rather large companies. In a mix between, I could say, innovation, that's a broad term, and IT, digital, and marketing, sort of. I mean, a mix of those things. And then I've sort of like slipped into what is called Agile coaching.
How did you get into this Agile coaching? And then, when did TameFlow come into your life?
That's like 3 months ago or something, or 2. I was introduced to TameFlow by Michael Küsters, who I was, chatting a bit with on LinkedIn, especially. And I asked Michael about his opinions on various topics, so he recommended this stuff. And I sort of initially I didn't want to read the book because it sounded like just another thing in the Agile vocabulary. But I mean, okay, ultimately, Mikael sort of convinced me, and then I read the book, and I very much enjoyed it, and I think there's some pretty good stuff in here. Very interesting.
Good to hear.
Yes. Yeah, and in terms of Agile coaching, I think, I mean, this basically probably happened when I had my own company, and I was doing, you could say I was doing web design a lot, and I found that I was, unfortunately, I was spending way too much time on trying to understand the customer's needs and writing contracts. So guilty of that, over specification, and the customers were not happy, and I was not happy. It was pretty bad, to some extent. And then I basically tried to take a learning from my graphical design thing. So I just started instead, I would sketch something, show it to them. And they would say yes, no, and I would show it to them. I mean, so this is basically iterations, and then I stumbled over Scrum, and I had, some colleagues helping me, or, partners. So
you
then
can't avoid that. You can't avoid stumbling over Scrum, right?
No, no, maybe not. But this was actually, I mean, this was in like 2002 or so, 2001 or so. So it's a fair amount of time ago. And then, so basically we tried it out. I said to the customer, if you're not happy with this stuff, it's on me, and you won't have to pay anymore. So we tried it out, and that was that was a pretty good thing for both the customers and my company. So from that, I mean, that's like the starting point for Agile, if you will. So I've been doing that and scaling also before, scaling or whatever we want to call it, coordinating between multiple, Agile teams and not Agile teams, actually. I've been doing this before SAFe and all the other stuff.
The pest environment, as I
yes, exactly. Yeah, the pest stuff. I've been doing that for quite a while. So that is how I sort of like slided into this stuff somehow, accidentally.
I read on your LinkedIn or somewhere that you are into something that I know nothing about. It's called prototyping.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
Oh, that's a passion of mine. I mean, this actually comes from. Well, this is about. If you consider all the stuff that we have, if we take, I'll just use SAFe as an example. It's not to say anything good or bad about SAFe or anything like that. If we consider that a body of knowledge, or we can also take like PMBOK, project management body of knowledge. It's a body of knowledge. It's a toolbox, and there's a lot of tools in that toolbox. So if you think about prototyping, it's a specific tool, and this specific tool, or you might call it a pattern, probably, or something, or maybe a couple of patterns. This is about answering the following questions before we build anything. Do our customers need our service? Will our customers use our service or product? Will they pay for our service or product? How much will they pay for our service and product without actually building anything whatsoever? That's actually the aim of this stuff, and you can do that. So it's even more lean than lean startup, I would say.
Okay, but it's similar in philosophy as lean startup. So it's
it's very over.
Discovering the customer dimension, so to say. Yeah.
Very overlapping with lean startup. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're in this field, and of course you're making a living of Agile stuff. But are you using TameFlow actively or planning to do so?
Well, I'm actually doing. I mean, I tend to when I read a book, I sort of have some things that I expect from the book, or rather from the authors. So when I read it, I expect to be able to, first of all, understand what it's about, the concepts in the book, and I expect to be able to apply them right after without any kind of help. I mean, if I'm able to do that, I think the author has done a great job. And I think you have done that, because I am actually starting to use some of the TameFlow stuff. I'm not saying to people that this is TameFlow, because they'll just get confused, because we are using a lot of different terminology. But I am actually using some of this stuff. So we're using SAFe.
What stuff are you using?
So it's the operational flow stuff. That's a big thing. But anyway, we have chosen in the company I'm in right now. It's like a decision that we should use SAFe as a framework, a scaled agile framework for lean enterprises. And that is well, there's some good in the sense that can be like a common language, that's just like common vocabulary. On the other hand, it's also huge and it's growing by the minute almost. So it's getting more and more confusing, actually, I would say, and that's not really helpful. So I mean, I'm using the TameFlow, the concept, the mental models, all that stuff. I'm using that for improving flow or getting started with that stuff. Actually, we can flow time, lead time, that stuff. And also, I agree very much to the notions you're describing with that it's problematic to introduce WIP limits, on columns. So so I'm starting. That's where I'm starting. So yes, I am actually using this stuff and helping others understand this stuff and use this.
Okay,
in a pest environment.
We'll get back to TameFlow soon. But now, how's a typical day in your life? Even personally, what are you doing?
Yeah, so I mean, typically I just get up in the morning and sometimes if I actually the first thing I do, I step on the weight, to measure my weight. Because because I had while I was self-employed, my weight essentially like exploded. I was eating poorly and I stopped exercising altogether because I was focusing on that. So today I just have this habit: step on the weight. And that's like a leading indicator metric, right? I can, the weight is going up, and it's not because I'm hitting the gym and building muscle. So maybe just go for a run or whatever. Right? So that's what I do to start with, and then sometimes I actually write stuff down that I dreamt about, because I have another habit in the evening that I tend to actually think a little bit about challenges on purpose and sleep on it. And sometimes that will actually then I'll, when I wake up, I'll sort of like, I have an idea or something like that. So I actually find that nice. I don't find it stressful. So it depends. Some would maybe not like to do that, but I actually find it very beneficial to work on the problems while I sleep. Maybe that sounds odd, but I think that works well for me. And I don't think I have any typical days actually, because by design I basically keep my calendar fairly free, sort of like 80% free, and 20% is maybe booked, and that's because I think that my main what I should do is I should be available for whoever needs my help. So I'm helping a lot of colleagues, both in upper management, if you will, but also like where I'm sitting and in some Agile restraints. So I'm supporting 5 so-called Agile restraints. So that's like 5 times 125, 150 people or colleagues somehow. So I have to make sure that they are not that I'm available, so I can help them with their problems, if they have something or just want to have a chat. So no typical day, Yeah.
Yeah, it's every day is an adventure. And in this professional career, what important skills or insights have you developed working in this kind of knowledge work industry?
Yeah, I think that I'm from well, who isn't curious when you're a child? I mean, children, they tend to ask a lot of questions. I have always done that, and I still do that. I think that I'm fairly curious, so I ask a lot of questions. I actually earned the nickname question mark, which I'm happy about. Question mark. Yeah. So okay. And also got the nickname Kung Fu Panda. Maybe that's not as cute. I think that was because I was noisy and like to eat, maybe. But anyway, I think that So I like to ask questions, and what I've had to learn a little bit is also to listen. So it's very easy to ask questions or talk as I'm doing now. It's way more difficult to listen to others and listen for deep meaning. Or listen for mental models, as you would probably use that term. So that is something I've learned, and I'm practicing it daily. It's difficult. It's funny
stuff. Not only you, but also we had Tom Cagley a few days ago, and someone else before. But this is a recurring theme in this audience. It seems that we are all very self-aware of the need, or trying to be self-aware of the need to be able to listen and become like more receptive to maybe other strange, funny ideas and develop our own. So the mental models come back in there. What are the greatest rewards you've had personally and professionally? And what would you like to receive from this industry?
So, well, I think basically I actually have to copy Michael Küster's answer. So he took it, so that it's annoying. But I think, I mean, it's basically that I help somebody, and I mean, that's, to me, that's like a drug. I mean, if somebody shows gratitude, it's like, I mean, that's the best thing in the world. So for instance, in the company I'm in, I mean, it seems a little bit like it's not that just this company, but there's like a discourse or a way of thinking that, the goal, if I use that terminology, is to decrease FTEs, full-time employees, on the notion that is like why we're here, or that is a good thing in general. Personally, I don't agree whatsoever. I find it very odd. I would rather increase the top line or something else. But anyway, there's this stuff. So sometimes we have organizational changes and some colleagues are left out of a job. So it's basically like helping them in that bad situation, which I've tried myself numerous times actually. So yeah, helping them and in that situation, because I think that's extremely difficult situation when you're put out of a job, right? Am I worth anything? You can get a self confidence issue pretty quickly, I would say.
Absolutely, and I think you just touched on one of the perverse consequences of cost accounting, and you see this often after restructurings or when new management blood comes in and they are under pressure to quickly show results. And what is the simplest, most straightforward and fastest way to show a result? Well, it's to cut costs, and then you will have an immediate, good, positive, great plus on the bottom line. But the year after, you will probably have a lot of pain. And in that, I think Goldratt was very, very wise, because his general approach is, don't throw people away. They are precious resources, even if that word might raise a few objections. But that is the notion. You don't dispose of people. Instead, you try to, as you said, to increase the top line, because there is no limit. Mostly it's your own mental models that keep you back there. But okay, so we have the TameFlow community, and it's steadily growing. The interaction there is quite of a high quality. At times I'm surprised by the dialogues. But what would you like to get out of a community of peers, and how do you see the TameFlow community site develop going forward?
So, I mean, I'm new to this, but in general, as I said before, I'm extremely curious, and I like to try to identify mental models or patterns, as you might also talk about. But I also like to challenge myself. So, I have to challenge I like to be challenged, if you will, in terms of my own mental model. So that's what I'm looking for. I mean, for learning and getting my own mental models challenged, and also contributing in the same sense. So I think that's a give and take somehow. And I think especially the various patterns and that stuff is extremely interesting for solving like distinct problems or moving through some kind of transformation. I think that's of great interest.
And your handle there is just Mark. Why not question mark?
Yeah, maybe I should. Maybe
you should update that, right?
Yeah, maybe I should have taken that. I sort of
right. Yeah. But so everyone on listening to us on the community, they can find Mark as Mark and continue with the conversation with him directly there. Now, we're getting to the point where you will have the burden of asking me some questions or proposing topics, and let's see what we can make out of that. Unlike the first few episodes, I have not really prepared anything, so I know the thing is up to you. And I took notes of a few things you said, like that you are customer obsessed. That's one, and then the last thing here of the restructuring by firing. Those are things which I think are interesting. But no, you tell me what are you wondering about TameFlow, and anything you'd like me to develop further in these 20 minutes.
So I'm thinking a little bit about.
Hold on. Sorry to interrupt you, but I forgot an important thing here before we go into this. I forgot to greet our audience because we have a few comments. So just keep your thought there for a moment, or develop it while I say hello to Nick. Hi, Nick. You're welcome here. We have Aram, who was on the show a few days ago and also asked many questions. We have Piotr, whom I think is new. I haven't seen Piotr before here, or at least not in the comments. And we have Jerzy from Poland. So hello to all of you, and I know Daniel is probably listening as well, and maybe there are others. But okay, now we go into the conversation, and you who are listening now, add your questions in the comments, and we'll catch up with them later. Your questions.
Yes, so I'll actually start with a question which I sometimes ask in various settings and trainings. So if I ask you, what is the commonality between cultural transformation, digital transformation, agile transformation, what would your answer be?
Well, if I just look at the words, it's transformations, right?
Yes, and I get that answer a lot. So that's almost always I get that answer. And what I've actually done, I haven't brought it here, but I have this laminated picture which I got with a guy without any clothes on, and in front of his private parts, he's holding a sign, and I wrote a word on that sign, and I wrote management fashion. So and I think that is sort of like what a lot of people are feeling, and they're coming to like safe trainings, which I'm providing and stuff like that. So my question is really, I mean, what's different about TameFlow? Is it just like yet another thingy? Because that was what I thought when Mikael Küster started rambling about this stuff. Sort of like, what is this stuff, right? Is it just like Scrum version 2, or Lean Scrum, or what is it? What is it all about, the fuss?
Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint. Maybe I'll try to give like a short answer soon. But the reason why it's hard to pinpoint is that number one, it's based on mental models, so it's very, very brainy, if you wish, and some people are just too hands-on pragmatic to even stop a second to reflect, and those you will typically have a very hard time reaching with something like TameFlow. The second reason is that it's focusing on 4 flows, which typically address 4 different audiences in the company. You could say that Scrum and Safe, they are squarely in the domain or in the area of responsibility, say, of a CTO or CIO. It's the techies playground, basically. So it's very, very well defined. But here we're talking about the 4 flows. So not only do we have the operational flow, which is probably going mostly in that area, but we also have like the financial flow. So we have all the guys who are in finance who might get a different pitch than the one I would give to a CTO. And then we have the like the psychological flow, and that's something you would talk to people in HR who very often have a background in psychology, and of course they get very interested and excited if you show them that, hey, look, TameFlow is based on elements of psychology which maybe you don't have so readily available and explicit, or not at all, in other approaches. Then we have like the information flow, which is probably the one that you would pitch to the CEO, and that's easy. Hey, CEO, I know you are overloaded. You never have time. That's why you barely listen to what I'm saying. But would you like to be in a position where you get the right information at the right time, and avoid being overloaded as you typically are? So you have these four different perspectives, and that makes, on the one side, it's an advantage because there is plasticity, like in the presentation, in the discourse. You can adapt describing TameFlow to who is your audience. But on the other side, it's also a disadvantage because there is no one single message that you can like pinpoint. But of course, the common thread is that you enable people to make decisions. So decision making is a key point. Decision making is based on mental models, and all this I always frame in the conversations with CEOs with Goldratt's question: do you want to make money today and in the future? Inevitably, they will answer yes. And we have a method here that will allow you to make more money today and more money in the future. Are you willing to listen? And hopefully that is like the opening of a tiny like opening in the door, but sufficient to start the conversation going. In TameFlow, we always have this notion of enlightened self-interest. So you always strive to figure out what is the self-interest of the person on the other side with whom you're talking. And because TameFlow is construed in order to achieve this unity of purpose that I always talk about, one trick, so to say, to get attention is to highlight some element, some desirable element that these people listening to you would strive for. And of course, for a CTO, it's something different than from a CFO and so on and so forth. But you highlight that desirable element, and often you get a positive response because the reaction is, that's interesting. That could be beneficial for me. And if you're then able to broaden the conversation and invite other like actors of that company to speak, you adapt the pitch to their interest, and then at a later stage you have them all together. And you can say, oh, you see, that thing that you wanted, it's good because of, it's pushing towards the unity of purpose. And that thing that you other guy wanted, it's good because it's also pushing there. And you see, you're all wanting the same thing. And that often provokes like a powerful aha moment. They understand that, oh, we're in this together. And that's one of the most enthusiastic moments of doing TameFlow, when you get the whole organization to realize that, yes, we're in this together, so let's do it together. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that was a pitch.
Yeah, I think so, because I think that's also a little bit like some of the problems I've seen in like I talked about like agile transformation or digital transformation or whatnot transformation, and what I see very often is this like disconnect. That especially if you're saying a word like agile transformation, then I'm making it very black and white. But one group of people in the company would sort of think this is like some hippie stuff, and it's touchy-feely, and that's the psychological flow thing. But come on. I mean, that's not really important. We're here to make money. So that would be one extreme, one group of people, and the other group of people would basically say, yeah, it's not about making money. It's about the greater things in life or purpose or whatever. So that's like secondary. So you can sort of easily have this very, very big divide, and I think that is sort of what you're talking about here in terms of like mental models or perspectives. That is actually the same thing, or they correlate, or they should live in symbiosis, or as you call it, unity of purpose.
Well, I think that there is this divide, and I actually had this conversation with Tom Cagley in the last Spamcast. The point is that the driving mental models of top management are not compatible with the driving mental models of people on the ground. The reason is cost accounting. So that's like the root cause of all this. So I always say, start with top management, because unless you get top management on board, you will never be able to do any kind of transformation, whether agile or lean or next fancy fashion transformation. It will just not work. But if you want to speak to top managers, you have to use their language, which is numbers. So anything you present to top management must be expressed in numbers. And if you can show that with throughput accounting, they will make more money, and that is relatively easy to show if they listen to you for 5 minutes, then you will get their interest. And the key point here is that the mental model behind throughput accounting, so the financial flow, is entirely consistent with the mental model that you would deploy, say, in operations. So operational flow, there you of course focus on operational throughput, but the key element here is that the decisions that you make in one flow are entirely consistent and supporting and understandable by the other guy who is caring about that other flow. So you're creating a numeric language with which they can converse. And of course, you will have the objections of the touchy softy guys of Agile, and that said, oh no, but we don't like numbers. We care about the human dimension. But that's where you need to create, again, like the self-interest. So yes, but if you want to have the space to express your humanity inside the company, you must have some very good arguments to counter the hard numbers guy. And the best argument you have is understand that if you want to make more money, you must introduce constraints management. There is a Herbie, and everyone else has excess capacity, which means that they can attend to the things that they care more about, like the human aspects, and which also means that they will have to, the word in TOC is subordinate, they have to subordinate to Herbie, to the constraint, and therefore you have this element of servant help, which in Scrum we hear all the time about servant leadership and so on and so forth. And when those arguments start to emerge, then even people who are like agile fundamentalists, they see that there might be something in it for them as well. So another conversation will start there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anything else? Or shall we maybe take a look at some of the questions that are popping in? Let's see. We had Piotr before, and he says now he was not connected live, but watching all videos. That's great. Why we always want people to watch our videos. We have Rudiger. Hello from the UK. Will not be able to stay. We'll watch the replay. Okay, Rudiger will catch up later. And no more other questions. So we go on with our conversation. That thing you said at the beginning struck me. You're customer obsessed, and that's also something that we hear all the time. Can you elaborate on how you think that is relevant to TameFlow, or how
Yes.
do you think TameFlow helps in that?
Yes, I think it does. Well, what this thing is about. I mean, if we think about it in like, it depends a little bit on how you look at it. If we look at operational flow, if I can just convey two concepts to you, then it's probably easier. If you know SAFe, the SAFe framework, in that framework they talk about like two conceptual things called a operational value stream, which is basically there's a trigger, a customer needs something, and then some people and some processes and maybe some IT applications, whatnot, are involved in satisfying the customer need. So I mean that's the operational value stream. And then you have a development value stream, and the development value stream is basically there to improve the operation, one or more operational value streams. So I think, I mean, probably that is somehow integrated into what you call operational flow somehow. And if you think about the stuff I talked about, like prototyping, this is essentially designed to, especially, I mean, it's not limited to that, but especially if you have some kind of new business idea that you want to test. And especially if it's radical, I mean, it's something that nobody believes is true. There's no way of knowing whether or not this is a good business idea or not. Hence, you want to test it as early as possible with the least amount of effort and use of money. So I think it correlates very well, and then it depends a little bit of how you see this as something you might want to do somehow as part of doing business. I mean, you can apply this for, I mean, totally new business ideas or business model transformation, if you want to call it that. But you can do it on radical new things, but you can also do it like in more incremental innovation. Does that make sense? I mean, it's a little bit of it's very similar to lean startup, you can say. I mean, it's very overlapping.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there are many concepts that you would find in theory of constraints that are entirely transposable to this kind of thinking. And from a TameFlow perspective, what I always repeat is that even if you are in such a situation where you need to do some sort of exploratory activity just to learn what works and what doesn't, well, keep in mind that if your process, your way of working is suppose 10 times faster than your competitor, then in the same time you can explore 10 options while the competition would just get started with the first one. So speed of execution, speed of decision making are strictly correlated to having the capability of doing what you are saying. That on the one side. On the other side, remember, gold ruts make money in the future. That in the future has this strategic perspective where you are actively like triggering new initiatives for the purpose of creating the future operational flow, which means like discover what new products you want to make. Now in TameFlow, I do this kind of work by using Popcorn Flow of Claudio Perrone, where you do a lot of validated learning experiments, and that I like the Popcorn Flow because it is like manageable with a sort of Kanban board, so you can visualize the flow of ideas and the convergence of ideas and the validation of these ideas. Are you familiar with Popcorn Flow at all?
No, I don't know that one. But I mean, what you're talking about here is also the essence of I would say of prototyping, because it's not about it's about if you think about it like portfolio management, you need some of that stuff, but I mean it is about also figuring out what is the next thing to improve your business. So probably you'll have to test. I'm just saying stuff. There's no right or wrong here. Maybe you'll have to do 10 experiments to figure out one that is like the next big thing for the or more, right? So it's about doing a lot of experience to figure out which one is actually something that the customers are willing to pay for. And the only valid data is actually, you have to have skin in the game. The only valid data is actually if the customer pays. It's behavioral data.
Absolutely.
Anything else is not allowed. It's not allowed. It doesn't count. So they have to put up their credit card. They have to pay. So to give an example, Tesla did this, something like that. They basically said we don't have the car. They even said we don't have the car. We just have an idea. And for you to be able to get on the list to be the first, or some of the first to get the car, you have to buy $5,000. You have to pay $5,000 now. That is skin in the game. It's real money out of the bank account. So just to give an example, we cannot trust what people say. We can trust what they do, when they speak with their wallet.
Absolutely. I think that is also very much in line with Goldratt's thinking that through, if you look at Kanban and theory of constraints, the way that like throughput is measured, Kanban stops at the delivery and does not look at the rest. When are you collecting the money? Goldratt's view is the game isn't over until you have money in the bank. So unless the customer has paid, you have not done your work. And of course, in an exploratory phase in product development or product ideation, that is even more significant. Now, I don't think many companies can create the hype that Elon Musk did with Tesla. So getting people to cough out 5,000 or whatever it was before there is even a line of design is maybe over optimistic for most companies, but the concept is.
I don't think so. It's absolutely doable. It depends on how you design the experience.
Well, I would love to learn more about that.
Yeah, I'm saying we can do this in finance even, which maybe sounds odd. A lot of people think I'm just crazy. Let's see.
Well, the fintech space is full of emerging companies which are like experimenting business models in that area, and being financed, there is of course to participate you need to pay. So I think maybe in finance it's even easier to do that in other situations. But that's an interesting point. We have a question though from Aram. What does Aram say? How TameFlow moves planning and execution management can be applied to the inner outer core teams, organizational design, where you have more than one epic support line move to be run in parallel. I would say it doesn't change anything. If the two lines are absolutely distinct and there is nothing that they share, then you can treat them as two different streams. But I think that is very rare the case. Why? Because if you're concerned about financial throughput, at the end of the day, you have like the quarterly reporting, and therefore those streams that technically are distinct, they converge. They need to be integrated into the financial reports. So because of this integration, I would rather treat them as one system, and therein you will have one Herbie. And this is what I tried to explain in the book and in the last few chapters, where we talk about the governance of these systems, where often there is like a virtual Herbie, and that could be like a deadline, like a regulatory deadline because you have taxes to declare, or it could be, as often is the case, a trade show, a conference where you want to be ready with your announcements and products. So I would suggest that you see these different streams as one system, and in that system find the Herbie, because then it makes it just so much easier to manage all of it. And do you want to comment on that, Mark?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. Now there is a mention of an epic. I don't know if that is just like a generic XP reference, or if it's related to SAFe as an example. But I mean, I can maybe build on this question, because I like the concept of a move, and I agree to that anything should be like isolated so it can provide value by itself. Like you talk about like it being atomic, I think, in nature, and I agree to that. So if you look at for instance, safe, and we're talking about a portfolio level epic, and here you're using lean startup, I think these things apply still. And I can tell you the company I'm in, and here maybe you want to comment, Steve, afterwards, because the company I'm in right now is the biggest Nordic bank. There's like 30,000 employees or so, and we're divided into 4 business areas and a lot of other like functions. So if we consider where I'm sitting, like a portfolio, a collection of things, here we would basically have some epics if we think about like portfolio management. And so my question then to you, Steve, is this. So if you think about TameFlow and we are talking about there's only one constraint in the system, do you think that's possible to identify? Here you can hear me laughing a little bit, but maybe I'm just getting ahead of myself. So if you're 30,000 people, would you consider one portfolio a system, and in that you would look for the constraint? I mean, one constraint, or would you consider like multiple portfolios, because now it becomes slightly complex?
Well, all this now goes to the fundamental question: what are the boundaries of the system that you are considering? So if you're at the corporate level, the CFO who has to make like consolidated. Oh, I just had a disaster here. My pen just broke, and look at that. No, I'm getting blue. I'm getting blue. Wow. Okay, pen to throw away. No other damage. So I was saying, if you're at the CFO level and you have to prepare like a consolidated report of all activities, of course it is one system, and therein there will be one constraint. And this goes back to my reasoning that I always repeat, that you have to consider what is your span of control and your sphere of influence. In your span of control, you will have one constraint, and it will determine what you're able to do or not. In the, let's say, next level or next sphere where you can reach out because you have influence, maybe it's the head of the department you belong to. That person will have a different span of control, and therein maybe there are 15 teams. I don't know, you make up a number, but out of those teams, because they are working for that unit, one team will be the constraint. And if you're on top of that and you have several departments with teams of teams, again, it's a fractal recursive structure. So you always need to think of, what is the system, what is under control. There I can define the constraint. And if the company or the reality wherein I'm operating is larger and I'm just a bit of that, I can't do anything about the constraint of the other department. That's the other department that has to take care of that. But those who are on top, who are managing all departments, of course they care about the one constraint that is holding them back. So definitely I stick to this idea. There is always one constraint that holds you back, but the subject there that holds you back, or the object, is different depending on the span of control, so the system's boundary. And that's my way of seeing this.
Okay, so you're basically saying in such a big company, the CEO might consider one thing to be the constraint, and others in C-level, which are maybe reporting to the CEO, might say, okay, I'm accountable for a business area which is under my span of control. I have P&L for this stuff, profit and loss. So here I consider whatever is one constraint in the system I'm accountable for.
Yes, and there you just mentioned the magic word, P&L, responsibility. That should change and should turn over to like financial throughput responsibility, because then the P&Ls or the numbers of the different departments will all reinforce one another, rather than trying to be the best of that little box or big box, and go back to the budgeting and the conflicts of budgeting and so on and so forth. So yes, the CEO will see one constraint, but all others, this boxes of boxes, every box will have its own constraint. It doesn't mean that there are multiple constraints. The definition is in the system, there is one. And if you change the system, because you change the system, the constraint probably will have changed, but it's still just one. Does this make sense?
Yes. Fortunately, it does. Yes.
Okay. So I don't see any other questions here. So maybe since we have 10 minutes, do you have other questions? Or maybe I do a short reflection.
No, not any particular questions. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I took notice of what you said. That customer obsessed, because that is something that is recurring in the Agile space, and they are also, don't remember the name of the journalist who's writing on Forbes, keeps on going back to this customer first, and I think that is not quite the right framing, because from a TameFlow perspective, Goldratt was always saying one of the pillars, the 4 pillars of TOC, one is people are good, and there is a focus on people, notwithstanding whether they are customers or have other roles. So I just want to go to the screen share and try to draw a diagram here. Let me just go completely full screen. Where is that button? Like there. Are you seeing my screen? Yes.
Yes.
So back to. Oh, hold on a second. My tablet has frozen. So we just get back to ourselves, and you can sing a jingle while I'm trying to revive the tablet. Are you good at that? No.
If I'm good at singing, I can get my guitar, but I'm just practicing, so I'm not very good at it.
Okay, let's see. Maybe this is back live. Hold on. It's always an adventure. Yes, I have it here, so I can return to the screen share and put it on there. So I want to reason about the customer focus, but take this from a throughput accounting perspective. We know that we always start with sales. The amount of sales is of course key. You said that before. If we don't make money, we won't have like bread on the table. So if this is our amount of money, in throughput accounting, we distinguish what is like the totally variable cost. For every unit that you sell, you have a bit that supports that sale, and then at the bottom we have like the operational expense, and what is left in the middle, like this part, is the net profit. And we are always keen on talking about value. Of course, the sales, this represent like the customer value. It's what the people pay you, and of course they value what you produce more than the money they give you. Otherwise, why would they pay you? But on the other hand, on this simple model of how you slice and dice the amount of money, we have the operational expense, which, what is that? Well, mostly it's the employee value. So if we want to make sure that the employees have enough money to pay the rent and the food and the schooling and everything, That is an important element. And then, of course, at the end, we have the net profit, which is like the investor or shareholder value. So in this like very simple subdivision of the money, the cake that is coming in, we see that we have the customer, we have the employee, and we have the investor. All of them need to be happy. Otherwise, this is like a three-legged stool. If one is missing or unhappy, the business will not exist today and in the future. So when I insist that with TameFlow we are concerned not only about customer value but also about the employee value and the investor value, this is what I mean. And you see here how these three values just come together in the fundamental variables of the throughput accounting. Throughput accounting is really simple. I'm not like Daniel. You know, Daniel is a certified public accountant. He knows everything about those spreadsheets and numbers. But throughput accounting basically is just managing 3 or 4 variables. So it's extremely accessible and extremely comprehensible. It's easy to understand. And at the same time, as you see in this diagram, we are representing these 3 values in those numbers. And that's why when we speak to the CEO or the CFO, we can make our case that everyone's value, everyone's interest is represented in the equations of throughput accounting. So that was it with this. Sorry, I wanted to switch the screen off. That was it with this like short whiteboard session. You know, any comments on that?
I can just I can at least say that I agree with you what you said here, and I think if you know this concept of conscious business, and it's also a very simple concept with 3 bottom lines basically, which is profit, so that's money. It's people, and you mentioned 3 groups of people here. You can also talk about other groups of people outside. I mean, in the wider community of a company, and then planet. I mean, those 3 things always need to be in balance. So
I'm smiling because one of the, I'm just looking, maybe am I putting blue ink on my face? No, okay, that would be funny, you know, if I got my face completely blue as well. Look at my hand, still blue. I'm smiling because in TameFlow I have this notion of the 7 Ps, which I've not written about, but it's basically the same to begin with. It's like profit, it's planet, it's people, it's passion, it's performance, it's priority, and another one I don't remember now. So it's very apt that you're saying like the conscious company, where you are considering the impact of the company's existence outside its own borders, and in the supply value network it operates in. Of course, on the one side you have the suppliers, and on the other side you have the customer. One way to think about that question that you were asking, will a customer pay this? Those 3 or 4 questions you asked at the beginning is really, now what constraint of the customer are we trying to impact? If you're able to figure out a constraint in the companies of the customer rather than your own, then you're in a very good position to come up with a very compelling proposition. And then the next step is this system, this value network, suppliers, our company, customers, it does exist in a greater reality, which is of course the planet Earth, and with all its problems, with COVID and climate change and funny evolving political situations. So yes, we always have like entertainment in this life.
The last one is self-inflicted.
It is, as many of these things, unfortunately,
Yes.
are self-inflicted. We are almost out of time, but let's see if we have a comment. Nick, what can we learn from the TOC-ICO conference you told us about in today's email? Well, the TOC-ICO, so it's the Theory of Constraints International Certification Organization that holds this conference, is a huge conference. So I don't know if you downloaded the program, but there are like 5 tracks over 3 or 4 days, and there's lots of material going on. I just cannot summarize. You have to take a look at the program, and if you didn't receive my email today, I mean, there is a special offer for the subscribers. So if you need that, get in touch, and I will get you a coupon. So Nick, I hope that answers your question. But I strongly suggest that you look at that conference, because you will learn a lot about TOC that with TameFlow we don't go in depth in certain of these topics, but which is very good to know. So thank you for that one, Nick. And Mark, any closing words from your side?
None other than thank you for having me, and also I'm really looking forward to engaging with all of you in the TameFlow community.
Yes, and since you mentioned the TameFlow community, just a reminder, you will find it at community.tameflow.com, and we are setting up trainers throughout the world. It's Daniel Baron is taking care of training the trainers, but we already have like a program. Sorry, not that one. This one, a program of training events, which you can check out there at tameflow.com/tameflow-training. And yes, I happened to click on that other banner, which I will show as well. It's where you can get Tame Your Workflow at a discount. It's tameflow.com, get-your-work-flow-book. So there you have all the coordinates. And again, if you want to ask questions to Mark, he is on the community side. So thank you for being here, Mark, and thank you, the audience. We will be back soon again. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.